Hello and welcome to the podcast that is less 30-yard screamer to win the FA Cup final and more a far post header bundled home to nick an undeserved 2-2 draw away at Watford. It's the big man up top. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hi, Ed. I'm good. That was quite wordy, wasn't it, one?
It was a bit, but, you
struggled to get your words out there.
Just a little bit, but we'll keep going. It's fine.
No, I liked it. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing very good. More to the point, how are you?
Ed, it's been a week.
It's been a week.
We're remote today, aren't we?
We are, yeah. We're coming to you. I was going to say live, but we're not live. We're coming to you from
our podcast.
It's a podcast. We're coming to you from our own homes.
Yes, we are remote today. Ed, do you ever get it when you're just driving along in your car?
Yeah.
And your wheel falls off?
I've got to be honest, that's never happened to me.
Has it never? Yeah, interesting.
No.
Because that happened to me on Saturday.
Oh, dear.
In Brighton, of all places, a long way from home.
A long way from home.
And yeah, a wheel fell off. Everyone's okay. The car had a temporary fix. I had to drive home at 50 miles an hour maximum. It took me 5 hours yesterday.
Oh, dear.
And I said, Ed, I'm going to need to do this from home.
Which is fair enough. And you know what, Joe? We're very grateful that you are well and, everyone in the car was safe. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Let's start with a roundup of the weekend's news. I think it's important that we touch, first of all, on the sad passing of former England manager Sven-Goran Eriksson. What are your memories of Sven?
Well, he was the first England manager I remember. He was, when I was growing up, getting into football, I remember the Beckham goal that he was the manager of when that went in. And that was probably the first memory I've had of being an England fan. And yeah, just generally quite a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's been the overwhelming memory for me, is that obviously there was, he had his there was issues off the pitch as well and all that sort of stuff. But he seemed like a nice bloke, really. And
yeah.
How much can you really know when you don't actually, know these people and all you're seeing is whatever's in the paper? But he seemed like a likable guy. I sort of remember watching the England-Brazil game, the one with the Ronaldinho free kick that looped in at the far post. I remember watching that in school. It was an early morning game, wasn't it? The Japan World Cup.
Yes, yeah,
so it's sort of similar to you. I'm a little older than you, so I remember sort of Euro 96 and France 98 and stuff. But that was a key memory growing up watching football. And a lot of the sort of England legend players, your Gerrards, your Beckhams, your Terrys.
Your golden generation.
Your golden generation have spoken very warmly of Sven.
And I think when we found out that he wasn't well about a year ago, he did an interview where he said that, obviously I'm a Liverpool fan, and he said in his interview that he'd always dreamed of managing Liverpool. So I remember the fan base really rallied round and kind of started this almost social media petition to get Sven to manage a Liverpool game. And they managed to do that for a Liverpool Legends game this year.
Wow.
And it was such a special moment. We're thinking, I love that he's had that chance to live his dream in the last year of his life.
Well, obviously our thoughts, prayers and well wishes go out to all his family and friends at this time. But let's have a look at the actual football. Joe, give us a bit of a rundown of the Premier League and what we saw over the weekend there.
Well, the highlights. Haaland still scores goals.
He does, doesn't he?
That's a big one. And he scored a long-range goal, Ed. I don't think I've seen him score one.
Yeah.
He was outside the box.
Used to that sort of bundling home in the 6-yard box generally.
And I think, obviously, Ipswich took the lead in this game. But none of us thought, it's on. We all thought, it's going to be 5-1.
It's going to be 5-1.
And very quickly, they turned it around. I think it was probably around 15 minutes. They were 3-1 up already.
Yeah.
And it was quite ominous what was going to happen. And did you watch the Chelsea game?
I saw bits of it. Yeah, I saw bits of it.
Now, it's funny that a team can score 6 goals and still come away with it not knowing if they're good or not. It was quite a chaotic game. And did you read about the Noni Madueke incident?
No, I missed this.
So he made a Instagram story the night before the Chelsea-Wolves game. It's away at Wolves, and I won't repeat what he said. He didn't say some very nice words, Ed, but he essentially implied that he didn't like Wolverhampton as a place. He then got incessantly booed for the whole game, and he scored a second half hat trick.
Yeah. What can you say?
And then he said sorry. He said sorry at the end. He said, "I'm sure Wolverhampton is a lovely little town."
I'm sure it's lovely.
Oh, it's lovely.
Looking at the Championship, there were some interesting games going on there. I think particularly, obviously, Cardiff-Swansea. There was a late equaliser. Is the 79th minute a late equaliser? I don't know. Plymouth got an away draw despite being down to 9 men. Sunderland and Watford looking really good early on, as expected, really.
Sunderland are looking great, actually. They had a great start to the season.
They have. I wanted to bring the first item to you, though, Joe. I went to look into sort of what were the big stories from League One and League Two over the course of this weekend. And I've got to be honest, I was a little bit taken aback by the amount of stories covering Wrexham. Now, obviously, Wrexham has been the centre of a documentary, Welcome to Wrexham, along with all of the stuff that's just generally on social media with Rob and Ryan. But I think the thing is at the end of the day, they are just owned by some celebrities. There are other clubs that are owned by some celebrities as well.
Yeah.
But looking particularly at the comparison between them and Stockport. Now, Wrexham have had a really good start to life in League One. They have won 2 and drawn 1. And there's plenty of articles out there. In particular, I was looking at the BBC. Just since this weekend, there's 4 articles on BBC Sport covering Wrexham with the titles "Wrexham remain unbeaten after emphatic Reading win," "Parkinson revels in Wrexham's connection with fans," "Wrexham there to be shot down due to owners." That's a quote from one of the players. And then also Wrexham not getting carried away after good start. So these are 4 separate articles after the weekend's game. And there has not been a single article about Stockport County. Now, Stockport County went up with Wrexham and have not only had a great start, they've had a 100% start. They have won all 3 games. They have scored 7 goals. They have conceded none. It's
not bad.
Pretty much a perfect start. And I think we could all agree that statistically, that is an emphatically better start than Wrexham. And yet there's not been a single article written about them on any sort of wider sort of mainstream media. And it just got me thinking, like, are we buying into this whole Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds thing a bit too much?
Well, yeah, I think, and the thing with those articles as well is they're not really stories, are they? They're kind of based around comments that have been made or like thoughts. They're not really reporting on anything. I think that documentary was great for gaining a new audience. You know, I think it really has highlighted what goes on in the lower leagues, the running of a football club, what it means to fans. We all have a responsibility to look beyond the celebrity status and, you know, what's going on around the league as well. But yeah, I went to a Stockport game last year, Ed.
Did you?
I went to Stockport against Tranmere. I don't know why. I think me and a group of friends just thought, we were visiting one of them up in the north, and we thought, let's go to a Stockport game. It's a good time. They won 2-0.
Fantastic.
I think it was 2-0. Might not have been. It wasn't the most interesting game, I won't lie to you, Ed. Okay, so it's come to the part of the podcast, Ed, where I test your footballing brain. Is that okay?
Oh, no.
So
I mean, it's fine, but I've got this horrible feeling that as the pod goes on, it's just going to highlight how little I know about football, really.
Well, you never know, Ed. We'll see what happens. It is 1-0 to me so far.
It's 1-0 to you.
Question right.
And I was also thinking about this the other day. I feel like your knowledge is much more current than mine. So you're sort of probably more in tune with the Premier League and stuff than I am. But I feel like my knowledge is more sort of classic Premier League.
Good. So this is the quiz. We don't quite have a name for it yet, but we're calling it Bible Ballers at the moment, Ed. The aim of the quiz is I'm going to ask Ed a question, and the answer to that question is a footballer's name, and it will be a name of a book in the Bible. Does that make sense, Ed?
It does, yes.
Good. So you've got your Genesis, your Exodus, your Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Don't think there's any footballers called Exodus.
I mean, that we'll find one, though.
We will. Okay, you ready, Ed?
I am ready. Hit me, Joe.
Ready, Eddie? Which fullback is the third longest serving Premier League footballer, having played for the same club since 2012? Quite a short question this week, Ed.
Okay.
Which fullback is the third longest serving Premier League footballer, having played for the same club since 2012? Have you got any initial thoughts?
I can't get Seamus Coleman out of my head, and I don't.
Oh,
think
you know the book of Seamus.
I don't think there's a book of Seamus, is there? There's no book of Kyle Walker. Goodness me. Yeah, I'm going to have to really think this one through, because this one could be a bit of a challenge for me, Joe.
Well, I'll give you the rest of the episode to have a think about this, Ed, and we'll come back at the end and see how you do.
So, Joe, my first question to you as we sort of lead up to our interview with John Bostock is, what's your sort of social media of choice, and what sort of poster are you?
What sort of poster am I? I'm an infrequent poster, Ed. I'm on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do the odd story. I'm not really a grid poster unless it's a big occasion. It's a holiday or something good's happened. But I'm a big old scroller on that.
Yeah, I'm very similar in terms of a bit of a lurker on X.
Yes.
I'm most active on Instagram, but I think it's safe to say that sort of social media is, it's a hot button topic at the moment in terms of the positives versus the negatives. It has a large part to play in terms of the mental health of, well, I was going to say young people, but I think it's all of us, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we wanted to have a chat with John Bostock. This is part 2 of our interview with John, and particularly he talked about what he does with his social media channel Ballers in God, which has really blown up over the last few years. And so we wanted to find out a little bit about what drives him and about the positive impact that he's having in that area. So we're going to move on to social media now, which is the sort of the main focus really of what I wanted to talk to you about. You're quite active on social media, particularly through Ballers in God. I think a lot of our listeners will know about Ballers in God, so I'd just really like you to share with us about your heart behind Ballers in God. Why does it exist?
So Ballers in God was formed in 2015, so we're coming up to our 10-year anniversary next year. And it was birthed out of a burden, really. I was in Belgium. I'd left England, obviously, out of my kind of network of church and family and friends. And so I found myself quite isolated and almost alone in my faith journey as a footballer. Obviously, I tried to visit church in Belgium, but the language barrier, my training schedule, it provided a hurdle. And I was just praying one day, and I just sensed that, there needs to be a community for footballers who have faith. And I was obedient to just take a step in that direction. And I came into contact with some of the players I met on my journey who were interested in faith or had some sort of connection to God. And I reached out to them. I just said, look, would you want to join an online meeting where we could just come together as players to pray, to read the word, to support each other? And they were really for it. And we had our first meeting in 2015 with 4 players on Skype. And we prayed, we laughed, we cried. It was a very, very wonderful time. It's like, there's some things you do, you just feel like God's signature's on it. It's like, oh yeah, God's presence is here. And so we grew and grew and grew to the point where players invited teammates, and we started to meet more regularly. And we kind of grew into 3 language groups, so English, French, and Dutch. So as of now, we actually have daily meetings, prayer meetings, weekly discipleship meetings online. And it came to the point where, we were serving players, players were getting, community and, they were getting support. And we recognized that actually there's a huge community out there of footballing fans and people who love football and are connected to faith. They also, I'm sure, would need, appreciate being encouraged and recognizing that there are actually many footballers out there scattered who do have faith and are quite vocal and bold about their faith. So we started the Instagram account and online socials in 2018. It was a few years after we started the main movement. And it took off like wildfire. It was really well received. And I think that football is a wonderful instrument to use to unite people, and so much more so with faith, So yeah, I think it's been encouraging for for the public and fans to see that the team they support or the teams that watch a match of the day or they follow in Europe, there are Christian brothers in those teams and in the women's game as well. There's Christian sisters in those teams who, they're in the world of football, but they're trying to do it for God's glory. So yeah, the Instagram's had a big impact. And over the years, we've received so many encouraging messages from footballing fans and people alike that have said that this Instagram account and the content that we produce has really ignited their desire to want to know Jesus and grow in their faith and help them in a day-to-day life. They look forward to the post. It's something that really gives me joy and is an encouragement to me. So that's the heart behind why we did it. We recognize that football's a wonderful platform, but can we use it to impact people for Jesus?
And certainly I can vouch, it's been a tremendous encouragement to me. There's just something really special, for example, like as an England fan, to get to see, Bukayo Saka running down the wing and be like, go on, because you feel like there's an extra 10% of, God's making him that little bit faster. I know, I'm kidding, but I think there is some real encouragement in that, and knowing that, yeah, just like I go to work every day and try and be the best follower of Jesus I can be, and that there's so many of you guys in that industry as well. So it's hugely encouraging. I think one of the things I wanted to ask was about Ballers in God being a positive presence in the social media landscape. I think social media gets a really bad name, and often quite rightly so, because there's a lot of negativity and a lot of disunity and that sort of thing, a lot of division. How important is it for you to be encouraging in that space particularly?
Yeah, I think, growing up as a young person in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was forums. Forums was a way that people used to try to, probably show my age now, but
I remember them too, mate.
a lot of
I
our
remember them
listeners were
too.
forums, and so that was a way that people would kind of get their, it's like a release and connect with a community. Now, social media is a complete different animal, and everyone has an opinion, and not only do they have an opinion, they have a platform to voice that opinion. Now, we live in a world where everyone has their own truth, right? But we recognize that there isn't many truths. Jesus said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. So his way is exclusive. This is not to make anyone feel excluded, but this is to Jesus invites himself to all who would listen and all who would accept him, to let him come into their lives. And so we recognize that social media is an incredible platform and tool to get into people's lives. Very rarely and seldom do people just wake up and say, I want to go to church today. But in actual fact, everyone almost wakes up with a device or goes to sleep with a device and checks the device throughout the day. And it's an avenue to present people with Jesus, or present them with encouragement, or present them with, maybe an alternate look to what they hear every day on the news or what they see in their workplace. I recognize that maybe not everyone has social media, but almost everyone has access to it, and everyone wants information. We live in an information age. So I feel like while there's so much information out there, I believe that the voice of the church, the voice of followers of Jesus, we need to have a loud voice, not to be obnoxious or to be radical in a sense, but to have a voice, for it to be loud, for it to be bold, for it to be inviting, for the world to see that we have something that can't be found elsewhere. Jesus really is who he says he is. So I think it's absolutely paramount. And you see, as players have kind of come out of their shell, players are very vocal about what they stand for in life, whether it's veganism, whether it's charity work. And also you find players of faith, Christians, they are very vocal, and they want to use their platform to show people that this is who I am. And there's also an invitation for you to look into what I'm into, so I think it's key. Jesus said, occupy till I come. And I looked at that verse, I was like, that's quite powerful. He said, occupy till I come. So he's actually given us authority and also boldness and the tools to actually influence culture, to influence those who maybe have never heard about him before. And social media is a wonderful tool that many, many people can hear him from.
That's absolutely amazing. You're so right. Just a couple of questions before we finish. In terms of Ballers in God specifically, what are your sort of hopes over the next few years with that platform? What do you hope can be achieved?
Yeah, so we have quite a few goals. We have been working very hard behind the scenes because it's a ministry led by players for players and the footballing world. So the players have been doing a wonderful work behind the scenes, and we've got structures inside where we're quite solid now, but we want to really start to, outreach into culture. So we want to help players and send players into mission trips overseas, where in the off season they can go and be a blessing to different cultures and countries. There is also in the pipe work a team that will come in time. We'll start at the grassroots level and work our way up through the leagues. So there will be a Ballers and God football team. You're hearing that for the first time.
Amazing.
It's not been used before.
That's an exclusive on the Big Man Up Top podcast.
There you go. And you know what? There are many things that we desire to do, like to have headquarters, a charity, and there's so many things we desire to do. But honestly, Ed, our focus will always be the same: to impact one person at a time, one player at a time, one person at a time. So we, by the grace of God, online on Instagram Lives, we've had many conversations with football followers and had programs, and we've done meetings for our following. And we've had the honor of leading people to Jesus on social media, on Instagram Live. So our goal will always be souls before goals. So we have targets we want to make, we have things we want to achieve, but souls and impacting people with the truth and loving people, serving them from the position of being a footballer and the platform God's given us, that will always be the foundation of what we do. So yeah, that's just a little insight as to what we're going to be pushing towards in the next couple of years.
That's amazing. Well, listen, John Bostock, thank you so much for joining me on the Big Man Up Top. And we'll be praying for you as you keep on your journey. We'd love to have you back on at some point and let us know how the team's shaping up. And if you need another centre forward, I can always dust off the old boots maybe. But
were you the big man up top?
I was at one point, big man, 5'7", at one point. Yeah. No, my playing days are well behind me, mate. But thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. God bless.
Ed, an exclusive.
An absolute huge win for the pod.
Absolutely massive that is. And you've already thrown your hat in the ring for a position on the team.
Look, I'm here. I'm ready to be called upon, like Crouchy in his in his final days. Look, just sign me up, Gareth. It's not Gareth anymore, is it? Lee Carsley. I'm here to represent my country.
Yeah.
I've already got the shirt behind me. Do you know what I mean?
You do. Just whack it on. No, that was a good chat. And what I loved is that he had such a big focus on community there. Do you look at social media as a community? Do you see it more as a place to get information, a place to have confrontation? What are your thoughts?
I loved that John was really positive about that. My sort of initial thoughts when we were going to be talking about this was social media is terrible. It's an absolute cesspit and a dumpster fire, and we should all be getting off it. And I think there's some of that. There was a couple of verses that I found in the Bible that I thought was really interesting. Now, obviously, social media wasn't mentioned in the Bible.
No.
But particularly in the days of fake news that we're in now, fact-checking is discussed in the Bible. So Proverbs 14, verse 15 says, "The simple believes every word, but the prudent considers well his steps." Would you call yourself simple, Job?
In some areas, yes.
But also 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21 says, "Test all things, hold fast what is good." So I think that's really interesting. It's not specifically referring to, check your sources there, but I think there is definitely wisdom that we should be bearing in mind when we're seeing people posting. It's just the same as hearing somebody talk in the pub. How much weight do you give what you're reading? I think there's a lot to be said for, particularly for young people, training in terms of an education of why you should be careful with what you say online. But I just loved the whole thing that John was looking at the whole thing in a positive spin, Joe, in a positive.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're absolutely right. I get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to be on this thing anymore. Like, there's so much negativity out there, so much criticism. I'm just going to leave X. But then I'm like, there's some good stuff. There's some good content on there.
There's some good memes, Joe.
I don't want to miss out on the funny stuff. But also we have a responsibility there as well. We as Christians need to be on these platforms to bring some light at the same time, to feed into conversations. And at the moment, I don't feel like it's a place where an actual discussion can be had. But I think we have this responsibility to be present on there.
Yeah.
I think Jesus would be on X. I think he would be getting involved in these discussions, making points. Obviously, his tweets would be a lot more profound than mine would be, I reckon. But I think this is a place where we need to be.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think that's the thing, is that, following Jesus' example, he went where the wisdom said he shouldn't go.
Yeah.
So he was often called a glutton and a drunkard because of the people he hung around with.
Sure.
I think that there's definitely something to be said there for the church going to people where they're at, and undeniably people are in social media spaces. And so I think, that's just something for us to think about, is how can we bring good discussion? How can we bring encouragement? Because so much of what fuels the algorithms and all that sort of stuff is the fear and is the anger and the negativity. But maybe we can be just doing our part to weight that in the more positive.
Absolutely. And it's that whole thing. I know it's such a cliche, but it's that whole of being in the world and not of the world, and being part of those conversations. And I love what John said about the Instagram live stuff that they do. The fact he's been able to lead people to Jesus on that. Like, what an incredible way to lead people to Jesus.
Yeah.
Years ago, you wouldn't have that opportunity to reach that amount of people. Social media can be used for such good like that we should be seeing this as an opportunity and not as something to avoid.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe when players miss penalties in European Championship finals, let's say, we can be not sending hate and abuse.
Absolutely. And Ed, when you sky a penalty for the Ballers in God football team, I will send you nothing but encouragement on social media.
Thank you, Joe. That makes me feel good.
Whatever text, I will absolutely rinse you.
And let's be honest, I will sky that penalty as well.
So Ed, earlier on, I tested your footballing brain. How are you getting on? Are you stressed?
Dear, yeah, it's bothering me a lot.
Do you want me to read you the question again?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so which fullback is the third longest serving Premier League footballer, having played for the same club since 2012?
So,
what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were basically trying to find Premier League fullbacks who shared their first name with a book in the Bible. So the first name that came to mind was a huge stretch. Didn't James Milner play at fullback a bit? Maybe
he's been known.
He's been known, and I thought, well, it could be James Milner, but I thought, well, actually, he's much more widely used in midfield, so that's probably a bit of a stretch. I also thought of Matty Cash, good old Matty Cash, and I was thinking he's been around for a while, hasn't he? Could it be him? But I have settled on England left back Luke Shaw.
Luke Shaw.
That's my answer.
It's an interesting thought. I'm afraid, Ed, looking at my list, I don't know how reliable this list is. It's on transfermarks.co.uk. Fairly reliable.
That's pretty reliable, yeah.
Luke Shaw is the 7th longest serving footballer.
Hey, that's a good guess, though.
It's a good guess.
I'm quite happy with Luke Shaw.
He's been in the Premier League for 10 years, 1 month, and 27 days.
So when did he join Man United?
10 years, 1 month, and 27 days ago. No, he was at Southampton beforehand. I can't remember when he joined. He's been injured for most of it.
That was another thing. I was thinking, like, is this an appearances thing versus a years thing? And I just went for Luke Shaw's been at Man United forever. So yeah. So anyway, no, okay. So who was it?
I'm going to run you through the top 3.
Okay.
And the third one will be our answer. Number 1, Seamus Coleman. You mentioned him, but there is not a book of Seamus.
Yeah.
Number 2, Lewis Dunk. He's been at Brighton for 14 years, 3 months, and 28 days.
Is he a fullback?
No, these are just in general, Ed. These aren't just fullbacks. But the answer to this question is Joel Ward.
Oh.
You know Joel Ward.
Of course, Joel. Yeah, good. I don't think Joel would have been in my 5 guesses. I think if you'd have given me 5, I don't think I'd have got there.
No, and he also hasn't really played for a while. So I'll let you off that one, but you have still got it incorrect. But
Yeah,
what I love, this has come full circle, Ed.
Yeah.
I'll read you this. Joel Ward is currently involved with helping and supporting local charity Faith and Football,
Is
which
he?
was set up by former Pompey defender Linvoy Primus.
Wow.
So he's very much involved in the whole football and faith conversation.
Joel Ward, we're going to have to get him on the pod.
I'll see what I can do.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
Thank you so much for listening to The Big Man Up Top. If you want to get in touch with the show, ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow, subscribe, and give us some good reviews, because that will really help us to get the word out in the early days of this podcast. And if you've enjoyed this, please tell your mates. And a big thank you to Anthony Salamat-Webb for editing this podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Have a good week.
Thank you, Ed.